Mike Redeemer here. Be a warrior, not a warrior. Today I'd like to talk about this. It's not the first testimony that happened after I got saved. We'll talk about that stuff later. But it is one of my favorite testimonies. This came from a friend of mine. His name was Ray. Those who know me and see this video know exactly who I'm talking about. But it didn't start with this sword. The testimony ended with it. So let me go back to the beginning. Shortly after I got saved, for the first year, I was very worried about my family. My experience with the Holy Spirit was very powerful and very real. It transformed my entire life very quickly and unexpectedly. I came home. The Lord told me I had to forgive my father or I was going to hell. And he was very serious about it. So he said I could do it now or later. So I just said, let's get it over with, and ended up going back to New England, where I was from originally. That first year, the Lord led me to a good church and to some good people that were mentors. And I prayed intensely for a lot of things, but mainly my family and friends that were lost. And it was really closer to a year and a half. But during that period, God did a lot of stuff that I'll also do another video later on about. But at the end of that year, and into the next year, like the early January of 2002, really, the Lord did a lot of stuff all at once. That was my first experience with how He does things sometimes. Sometimes when you pray a lot and you fast, He takes some time to set things up. But then He does everything all at once. He does it so that you'll have a testimony like this one. So, going into early 2002, in January, on the weekend that was New Year's, specifically, right at the turn of the year, I was invited to go to New York City to do a ministry there in the Bronx and surrounding areas, to witness and hand out food and blankets to homeless people, and minister to them if they wanted to be ministered to, pray for them if they wanted to be prayed for. We went with a bunch of young people. I was, of course, younger at that time, but there were even teenagers and things like that around with us on that trip. And we had a great time. But just before I went, the night before, in fact, on this long weekend, my grandfather passed away. He was from Massachusetts. He was a devout Catholic. And my father called me and told me I had to cancel my trip. And I had to go to the wake and the funeral instead. The Lord had been very clear that He wanted me to go on this trip. So I told my father on the phone that I was going anyway. And if the Lord wanted me to go to my grandfather's wake and funeral later that weekend on the following Sunday, the Lord would make a way. So and my father did not like that. He ended the call very angrily. On Friday, I got in the van with the other people at church, and we went to New York. We witnessed to a lot of people. We had a good time. I stayed up very late having some discussions with some young men about girls and about church and about God and my experiences with Jesus up to that point, how I got saved and all of that. And the second night, it was similar. We stayed up very, very late out on the streets of New York, ministering and witnessing to people. And it was effective. Some people came to Christ. Of course, this was 25 years ago now. So, but we had a great time. It was a good trip. It was productive. And God did a lot of things. And then I went home. I was exhausted. I had barely slept the previous 2 days. and we got home, left very early on Sunday morning, got home just in time for church. So we went to the church service with everybody, and then I went back to my apartment, and um, so we went from New York to where I lived in the countryside in New England, 5 hours away, and I was getting ready to fall asleep on the couch when the phone rang and my brother uh, called and told me that the casket that was ordered for my grandfather had been delayed due to a snowstorm in Pennsylvania, and he was coming to get me because he was still around where we lived, and he drove me down. We got to the wake just in time, down in Boston or near Boston, and I got a chance to witness to my entire extended family down there for the first time, which is one of the things I've been praying about. My father was very happy to see me. Everything seemed to be working out well, and we spent the evening and that night at my uncle's house nearby, and I ended up staying up all night again, witnessing to my cousins and other people that were there at the house, one at a time, and telling them my testimony over and over again. Then I went home after the funeral the next morning. The Lord spoke to me about some things that happened many, many years later at that funeral. But I went home, and my parents drove me back to my house because I was so exhausted. And I closed the door, laid on the couch, and then there was a knock on the door. And it was my friend Reggie. And my friend Reggie, he said, he came in, and it's an old friend of mine that I used to work with at a restaurant, and we used to ride motorcycles around with each other around New England, and had a great time, and went fishing and did things like that. Old friend of mine. And he said a mutual friend of ours named Stephen had harmed himself very badly over the holidays and was in the hospital. And he wanted to see me to hear my testimony. I'd been an atheist before I was saved and hung out with these guys. Had a lot of crazy, wacky adventures, and he had heard that I'd gotten saved, and he wanted to know what was going on. So this is where the story gets very interesting. So Reggie and I, we go out into my driveway, and I'm locking my door. I'm locking my door to my apartment, and the Holy Spirit came over me, and my hand hit my door like it was a backhanded knock. My hand moved, it jerked with the Holy Spirit, and I heard the Spirit of God, not as an audible voice. I don't hear him that way. Some people I hear do, but I've never heard him that way. But it's almost like that, and it just spoke to me. It comes through my spirit and just says, "Get your guitar." It was almost like a feeling, like a very compulsion, but it was very specific. Get your guitar. Now I play guitar. I did rhythm guitar in a band that I had a long time before that, but I wasn't particularly good at playing guitar at the time, and so I just thought, oh, well, I'm just delusional. I haven't slept all weekend, and I just need to take a break here. And so that was my thought, and so I just reached up again to lock my door. And the same thing happened. My hand, again, the Holy Spirit hit me. My hand hits the door, almost like it was a knocking like this. And the same message came through: get your guitar. So my friend Reggie now is standing in the driveway, and he looks at me. He's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know." And so I opened my door. I go grab my guitar, and he's like, "Why do you have the guitar?" I said, "I don't know." And so I said, "Let's just go. So I threw it in his backseat. We get to the hospital a little while after. And the psych ward there had a bunch of rooms lined up and a large lounge area around it, or I should say in front of it. And Stephen was sitting in the lounge area waiting for us when we arrived. And I brought my guitar with me. And Reggie was a friend, was a fan of AC/DC. So while I'm talking to Stephen, telling him about my story, Reggie was playing AC/DC on the guitar. While we were there, a young woman named Kelly, who I'll never forget. She was a wonderful woman. But she was a teenager, or not a teenager, but she was a college student at the time, going to a nearby university. She walked out of one of the rooms with a friend of hers that was visiting, and she had tried to harm herself as well. I'm just gonna say it that way on YouTube, and over the holidays, and she, on her way back from walking her friend out of the area, she looked at my guitar, and she said, "Who brought the guitar?" And I said, "Oh, I did." And she said, "Can I play it?" I said, "Of course, yeah. Sit down. Play it. Go ahead." She started playing this amazing classical music on the guitar, and we all stopped and just watched her for a moment and listened. She was an expert guitar player, and it was just beautiful what she was doing. At that moment, there were 6 or 7 other people in the psych ward that came out of their rooms, and they sat around us in the lounge area and listened to her play. And when she finished, one of them, his name was Lou, said, "Who brought this guitar, and why did you bring it?" And I said, "I did, and I'll tell you why." I spent the next 4 hours telling all of these people and more that came in as I was talking about Jesus and my experiences with him. And they asked me a lot of questions. I found out that we actually had stayed 2 hours later than we were supposed to, but the people in the psych ward who were running the place just let us stay. And by the time I left, there were 4 doctors standing next to the main entrance, just lined up on the wall, just watching. They watched for over an hour. When I left that place, Reggie looked at me, this old friend of mine who knew me when I was an atheist for years, and was stunned about when I was changed, like so many of my other friends, how much I'd changed, because I was such an adamant atheist. And I converted a lot of Christians to atheism, which I had to go back and talk to, as well as many people I had harmed, with my my pseudo intellect over the years, in different ways. He asked me, "Mike, what are you going to do the rest of your life?" That's what he said as we were walking out of the building. And I said, "Reggie, I don't know. But all I care about is that wherever I go, people know that God is with me." I stayed in touch with Kelly. We spent some time together. She got better. Many, many years later, after doing missionary work and traveling around the world, I came home, wrote a novel that the Lord was leading me to do. And while I was at Staples, getting it printed out so I could edit it by hand, I ran into her. She had gotten married, was a social worker, believed in God. Her life is great. And it was great to see her again. But you notice, I haven't talked about this yet. So Reggie brought me home that day. And I laid on my couch. And there was a knock at my door. I barely was able to get up to answer it. And an old friend of mine, named Ray, was standing there with us. Now, I have to back up a little bit now at this point in the story and cover something that happened 6 months earlier. The previous summer, Ray's girlfriend had come to me. They had broken up, and she had nowhere to go. I let her stay on my couch for a few days, and I talked to her about God. I prayed with her. I gave her some advice that was from God. It was clearly from God. It wasn't from me, about how to deal with her boyfriend and get back with him. I'm not going to get into the details of what happened in their relationship. But after all these things happened 6 months later, in the middle of the winter, Ray shows up at my doorstep just as I'm getting home from all of these things at the end of this story. And he gives me this sword. It was part of his collection. He was getting rid of it, along with some other swords. You had to dull it. It's not sharp. I hold it like this a lot, just like a cross, And I pray with it because of this, because of what happened. And he said, Mike, this belongs to you. And I said, yeah, what do you mean? And he said, thank you for helping my girlfriend and for not taking advantage of her like other people might have. This is yours. And then he left. I took the sword like this. I pointed it up at the ceiling. He looked up and I said, I take it this means I did a good job. I'm going to bed now. Because I had an interesting relationship with God back then at the first couple of years I got saved. And I went to sleep. But I kept the sword. And every once in a while, Ray gets in touch with me and says, do you still have it? Do you still use it to pray? Well, Ray, if you're looking at this video, not only do I have it and I still use it to pray, I believe God used me to use this to increase my faith in some serious spiritual battles, real ones that happened recently, just for your information. This enhances my prayer life. God gave this to me. He, as a reminder of that experience, of that weekend, of what he did, how he answered my prayer to witness to my family, to give me a chance to bring them closer to him, to witness to my friends, to bring them closer to him, and then others that were around in an amazing way that just happened to be there. But at the same time, that too was part of God's plan. And that's the lesson here. When you pray, mean it. Pray like people's lives depend on it, because they do. Pray that their eternal souls depend on it, because they do. And then God will spend a year, maybe less, maybe more, arranging things in such a way that when your prayers are answered, they might just happen all at once, like a spiritual explosion that reverberates and affects many. I've had many experiences like that over the years. This is just one of my favorites. I'm going to talk about the others soon. I'm also going to do some videos with music as soon as my voice clears up, because I'm just getting off this terrible cough that lasted a little too long. But I think I'll call this video The Sword of the Lord, because that's what this is. You can also say that it's the Bible. But this is definitely, to me, the sword that he gave me. I pray and hope that he'll give you one too. Whether literal, metaphorical, or otherwise. Some type of memory, some type of testimony that sticks with you, so that when you pray, you can't forget it, and it increases your faith. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate all of you out there. Stick around for some more testimonies. There's a lot more where that came from. God bless you all, and be a warrior, not a warrior. God is with you. God bless.